understand that your job, of most of the people here, is to help teachers to use technology in schools. I hope that is right. Well, I think it's a very difficult job because of a number of reasons. Due to one reason or the other, I have been involved with technology in education for, I don't know, how long is it? Maybe 30 something years. And the work that I used to do then and what I do now has changed completely in those 30 years. And I can tell you in advance that the work that you are doing today will be completely different from what you will do 3 years from now. The challenge for educational technology or people who work with educational technology is how do you adapt? So before I tell you what I'm doing now, I also want to tell you what the kind of reactions I get from teachers whom I meet everywhere in the world. The first kind of reaction which I get from almost everywhere is that you don't need technology for learning to happen. So if you are in front of a teacher like that, it's very difficult for you to make any progress. The second kind of teacher that I meet is the kind who says, I understand technology and I deal with children. You understand technology, but you don't deal with children, so you can't tell me anything. And the third kind, that is perhaps the most prevalent, the largest number, are teachers who say, I don't have the time. So, in that background, how do you take the next step? At the same time, in many countries, the school principal has made an investment in technology, or the government has given them technology. And the principal will then tell you the technology has to be used. So you have the teachers on the one side, you have the principal on the other, and you are in the middle. So to give you an example from England, the government decided that all elementary, primary schools should have smart boards. Every classroom has a smart board, and the blackboards were taken off. So I tried to find out what happens on the on those smart boards, and I discovered I got a funny response when I asked a teacher in a small primary school, so what is that for? She said, you know, it's a smart board. You are not supposed to write on it. So I then asked her, so what do? You don't have a blackboard to write on, and you can't write on the smart board. So if you want to write something, what do? And she said, believe it or not, she said, I take pieces of paper and I write it on that and I stick it on the wall. In another school, a teacher said, I love these smart boards. I said, why? She said, you know, instead of doing anything, instead of teaching anything, I can show YouTube videos on them. But in most cases, the whiteboard lies around unused. So, in many schools they ask me, what would be a good use of this? In one of the schools, the children, this was a primary school with children of, I think, age, 6 or 7 years old. So I asked the teacher, do you let them use the smart board? And she said, no, The smart board is for me, not for them. So I said, well, why don't we reverse that for once and leave the children alone with the smart board and tell them to do whatever they want. So we told the children are amazed, really, we can tell? I said, yes, do whatever you want. And then the teacher and I, we went out. And as you might expect, about 15 or 20 minutes later, another teacher came into the staff room where the teacher and I were sitting and said, what's happening in your class? So we said, well, why are you asking? And she said, because there are dinosaurs dancing on the whiteboard. So I then asked the teacher, is it allowed in your school for dinosaurs to dance on the smartboard? But she said, I don't know, I have to check. So we went back, and there was some game that the children had found, and they had it on the screen. So now the teacher asked me, well, that's fantastic, but what do we do next? So then I said, do you know how to get that game on the smartboard? And she said, no. So then I said, well, why don't we just ask the children to explain to us how to get that game on the screen? And we asked them, so how did you find out? And they said, just like that. So what's the lesson in all of this? Is that children of a particular age, this generation that's growing up, they don't have a problem with technology. So a simple starting point for using technology in schools is to give it to the children. So I have been doing this for many years now, to see that if you give children the technology, what will they do with it? And as you might imagine, if you have seen children with smartphones, they will do things with it which you did not know that your smartphone could do. Groups of children given access to the internet in a public space can learn anything by themselves. And I think that it's a very difficult job to get teachers to accept this. So I took an easy way out by trying these experiments in places where there were no teachers. And people would then, after a few months, ask me, how did the children learn all of this? And I would say, I don't know how they learned it, but I know one thing, that they did not learn it from any teacher. But the teacher did have a job. In this case, the teacher was myself. And what was my job? It was not to teach, but it was to provide the environment in which this kind of learning can happen. What does work is the ability of children to learn things using technology by themselves. And we have a name for it. We call it a self-organized learning environment. How? Well, it's actually very easy to conduct a SOLE. You need a few computers, about one computer for every 4 or 5 children. These computers should have screens which are visible to other people, they're big screens. And you need, of course, each computer to be connected to the internet. So if you set this up in a space, and then you take about 4 times the number of children as there are computers. So if there are 6 computers, you take 24 children. And then you make up a nice, interesting question, and you ask them to find the answer. I'll give you examples of what are good, interesting questions. You might start a conversation by saying, are aeroplanes heavy? Then you say, but how do they fly? Don't give them any other suggestions. In fact, it works best if you say, even I don't know the answer very well. And just leave them. Don't give them any instructions about whether they should use search engines. You might need to tell them that talking is allowed and that looking at each other's work is allowed. And give them about 30-35 minutes and then ask them to present the result. Usually you will find that half a semester's worth of physics would have got done. It all depends on how carefully you make the question. Just to revise, a few computers, big screens, 4 times the number of children, a big question, 40 minutes. So what's the, people ask me sometimes, so what is the job of the teacher then? It's a very difficult job. 2 very difficult things that teachers have to learn to do. One, to make a question. So whatever you are going to teach, to make it into a big, interesting question. And the second, perhaps the most difficult thing for a teacher to do, to stand back. So this is a soul. I'll show you a short clip produced by Soul Argentina on what is a soul. It will clarify some of these ideas.
Simple de definir qué es Sole es decir que es un espacio donde hay muchos niños, algunas pocas computadoras y una gran pregunta. Correrse de la lógica del lugar del saber, digamos, para pasar a la lógica del lugar de la pregunta, ¿no? Del lugar donde se abre la inquietud, donde se despierta la curiosidad, donde el saber lo construye el otro, ¿no? Realmente.
Y entonces un grupo tiene el cuarto de la respuesta, el otro tiene el cuarto, el otro tiene el cuarto y el otro tiene el cuarto. Y entonces ahí ya es el entero y sabemos todo. Lo ponemos en el pizarrón y lo compartimos.
Y vamos todo añadiendo ideas y cosas y todo eso y vamos llegando a esa respuesta.
En comunidades donde hay padres profesionales, ellos son los que ayudan en las tareas a los hijos. En estas comunidades, con la ayuda del internet, la computadora y con un modo de ver la vida diferente, que es a través de hagamos preguntas todos juntos y respondamos todos juntos, tal vez los chicos les puedan enseñar a los padres a responder preguntas y a no responder tantos ellos, ¿no? Los chicos le puedan enseñar a los padres tranquilamente.
Es una pregunta y ellos se abalanzan de alguna manera sobre todo lo que pueden buscar e investigar y eso abre muchas puertas.
La computadora es como una persona muy inteligente.
Con todas las acciones de Sole lo que queremos es expandir los horizontes de los chicos. La primera son los horizontes de conocimiento, o sea, trabajar, investigar un tema a partir de la pregunta ya es una expansión de los horizontes de conocimiento.
Nos encontramos también con cuestiones que ya atravesaban con lo cultural, con lo social, con lo barrial, con lo imaginario, con cómo ellos se representaban.
Que el enfoque Sole es eso, es abrir horizontes de todo tipo, ¿no? De conocimiento, de aspiraciones, las motivaciones.
Esto surge porque se les da esta libertad y se les cede el poder de decir y en este vuelo y en esta libertad aparece para mí algo mágico, que es chicos de 4º grado que por ahí eran muy tímidos, que no se animaban tanto a tomar la palabra, coordinando una sesión y pidiéndole silencio al compañero o invitándolo a que vuelva sobre su propio trabajo.
Yo lo que noté desde el principio ahora es como ese entrar y no el miedo, ¿no? El miedo que hasta incluso al adulto le da. Ellos entran y buscan y después se van imágenes solos, antes no lo hacían.
Se animan a ir avanzando en sus búsquedas, entendiendo de que van a encontrar algo más amplio o mejor o más interesante.
Me parece que la intervención del docente es muy importante en la sesión de Sole pero es diferente, porque acá lo que se privilegia es la palabra, la pregunta, la inquietud del chico y generar más curiosidad. No se está tan atento a medir, a ver qué aprendió o hasta dónde llegué en la planificación, sino a generar una manera de pensar, de interrogarse, de dudar.
La idea es que los chicos le enseñan a los profes y hay una retroalimentación permanentemente.
Acá hay una mini revolución que se está gestando porque el poder lo tienen los chicos.
Se siente como que sos importante, que todos te miran diciendo, mirá, estás en el pizarrón, profe. Y piensan que vos te crees muy bueno, te crees que sos el mejor.
La profesora no nos dice nada para que nosotros aprendamos, nosotros solos, que busquemos, por eso nos dio la compu, para que investiguemos nosotros.
A mí me gusta hacerle porque es una manera más fácil de aprender.
Me pareció maravilloso.
I think you saw bits of the 3 or 4 things that I was talking about: comprehension, self-confidence, enjoyment, and self-organized learning. So the first example is, I was saying that children their reading comprehension goes up. The final experiment was actually done in this city, where I gave a group of, I think about 10-year-olds, a piece of text which is from undergraduate university level. So there, in that clip, you see 2 important things. One is the fact that the teacher is absent. Otherwise, they would not make so much noise and run around so much. But it is the noise and the discussion and the running around which is producing the comprehension. And you could also see why the big screen is important. So the example I'll show you is in a school in England, where I had visited and I told the teacher, don't tell me what children I'm going to meet, and don't tell me what I'm supposed to do. So when I went, I found that they were all about 12 years old, and the class was on art. You know, I have absolutely no background in art. And he said, I would have done Cézanne's use of light and shade in still life watercolors. Now then, the art teacher went away, and I told the children, we've got big trouble. I said, look, here is what the question is. I wrote it down. And I said, I don't understand a word of it. As soon as I said that, the entire atmosphere in the class changed. I said, look, we can't give up. You go for it.
His full name was Paul Cézanne. Cézanne was his second name and Paul was his first name. He was French. He was born in 1839 and he died in 1906.
In most of his paintings he made them 3-dimensional. So that was achieved by the front being lighter than the back of the painting. So that showed 3-dimensional, which he was, compared to the art in his time, he was like a new generation and like inspired like the whole of the world
No, basically.
He was a still life painter. His still paintings are pictures of settings or objects in a still picture.
First they said who Cézanne was and when he lived, and then the second child said he could make pictures look like 3D using light and shade, and that generations of painters after Cézanne have learned this technique from him. So I got the art teacher back in. He said, what I want to leave you with as a thought is that it is not a question of what the technology is. The question is, can technology enable a different kind of learning? The question is not whether technology can replace a teacher. The question is, what is important is, can technology be something that is bigger than a teacher?